All right, so we're going to be going over how to make this shape. So the first thing we're going to do, this is what I think is the most intuitive way to go about it, like the most obvious. But if anyone has other ways that they tried, let me know. You can put it in Slack. If you want to record your own video on how you did it, that'd be fantastic. But a lot of ways to do these things. But the way we'll go over now is I'm going to first extrude this bottom like a rectangle here lying down. Then I'm going to cut the corner off. After that, I'll go over here, make a sketch of another rectangle and extrude it upwards, and then I'll cut this square off of that corner. That's going to be my game plan for this. So let's get started. All right. So first thing we're going to need to do is we are going to need to make a 3x2 rectangle. That's going to make up our base. So we'll just make a new part. All right, and I'm going to go into options. Remember, I always have that issue with ISO and ANSI, so I'm going to change it over to ANSI. All right, now we're good. All right, so let me start a sketch. This one's the rectangle laying down, so I'm going to make it on the top plane. And when I extrude, it'll look like it's lying down. So it is 3 long, 2 wide. All right, now let me double check how thick I need to make it. All right, looks like I need to make it. Oh, notice all my lines are black. That means everything's fully defined. That's good. All right, so now I'm going to extrude it, and I checked it's 1/2 inch thick. All right, there we go. Looks a little thick. Let me just check my feature. Nope, that's correct. All right, so there is our kind of bottom rectangle. So now we need to cut a corner of it. So I'm going to go into sketch, make a sketch, and I'm going to draw a quick triangle here. All right. Now notice these 2 lines are fully defined, so I only have to worry about messing with this guy. And you can kind of tell because if I move it around, that's the only line that'll move. So let me just check on the dimensions of that. It looks like both legs of it are going to be 1 inch. So that's nice and easy. I'm going to do 1 inch, 1 inch. And now this I'm going to want to cut. So I'll go to extruded cut. Now, obviously, this was a 1/2 inch thick. So if I cut it 1/2 inch deep, it'll cut through everything. But since I'm cutting through everything, I'm just going to put through all. In this case, it doesn't matter, but if you're going to be cutting all the way through something, usually I like to try to just put through all, not have to worry about trying to get the right distance or anything. All right, well, now we have a rectangle with a cutoff corner. Good start. So now we need to worry about that part that's standing up in the back. So before I start a sketch, I'm going to check on the dimensions. Fortunately, you can't see my screen when I'm looking at it, but it looks like I'm going to need to extrude it, or hold on. We'll do this. Okay, so notice from the bottom to the top, it's 2.5 inches. Now this is somewhere where you might get messed up because remember, this part here is already 1/2 inch thick. Now I plan on starting my sketch on the top of this piece here, which means I'm going to need to dimension. Well, when I do my extrude, this won't matter while I do the sketch, but once I extrude, I'm going to be drawing my little rectangle from here to here, right? And when I extrude it, how far do I need to extrude? I'm not extruding it 2.5 inches because we already have that 1/2 inch offset. I'm only going to be extruding it 2 inches. So let's kind of look. So it's going to be my rectangle. It looks like it's going to end up being 2 inches across and then a 1/2 inch over this way. Then I'm going to be extruding it up 2. All right, cool. So let's go into SolidWorks. Now I can draw the rectangle. It'll make a little more sense what I just said in case you weren't following my mouse. All right, make my little rectangle here. Now let's do our dimension. Now notice this guy's already 2 inches because I decided to say that one corner is here and one corner is touching this line. And notice that these lines are already fully defined. We know how long they are. What ends up happening is if I try to still dimension it as 2 inches, it says it's going to be over-defined. That basically just means I already had everything fully defined and I'm adding another dimension and it doesn't like that. So I'm just going to hit cancel. I'm going to not worry about that for now. All right, but what I do still need to do is I need to define how far away these two lines are apart. And you can kind of tell because if I try to manipulate this, get rid of that dimension. The only thing that I can move is this line back and forth. So that's what I need to dimension. And remember, we already said we know it's going to be a 1/2 inch thick. So I'll just go line to line. And I also could have just clicked on that line, given that a length, but it doesn't matter too much. All right, so 0.5. And now remember what I had said. From the bottom of everything all the way up to the top, it's 2.5. But since I started from the top and we're already a 1/2 inch off the ground, we're only going to extrude 2 inches, right? 2.5 minus 1/2. All right, so we're going up 2 inches. Now, the last thing we need to do is cut off our corner, our little square cut up. And remember what those dimensions were. That was a 1x1 square, but I'll double check myself just to make sure at the very end. And so I make my quick rectangle. Now remember, I want this corner here, the other corner somewhere out here. I don't know yet. That's why I still need to add my dimensions. So it will be 1 inch by 1 inch. And notice when I make a sketch, it doesn't snap to it for me. And I kind of went over this in the class why, but I don't know why, but what you can do is if it does, it should snap to it for you. But if it doesn't, and you want it to, which usually you do, this was kind of simple. I just need to draw a square, so I don't worry about it. But what you can do is you can right click on your sketch and then click normal to, and it'll automatically just flip you to face it. And now the reason why these lines are still blue is because I have the sketch selected over here. So it's highlighted, kind of like how if I click this, it'll highlight that. But if I click off everything, I see my lines are fully black. That's good. So now I can do my cut because everything's defined. And like I had said before, cutting through everything, obviously I could just set it to a blind and have it 1/2 inch deep or more. This would work too. It's going through it, right? That extra distance isn't hurting anything, but just for consistency, and I like to do through walls because that way, if I decided to make this wall thicker, I know that the cut would still go all the way through, right? Because it's going to go through everything. So let's say I wanted to make this wall maybe 5 inches thick. I wouldn't have to change my extrude. I could just say through wall, no matter what, it's always just going to cut through everything. And there we go. And what we can do is if we hit space and click on isometric, let's kind of take a look at how that looks compared to the other things. So that's what I made. And then here is the drawing. Yeah, the square was 1x1. So fairly certain I got everything right. It looks pretty good. So I'm going to go back over to SolidWorks, and I'm going to show you a way you can kind of check yourself against mine. So remember how I said in the first lesson, all you're ever going to really need are features and sketch? I'll cover this later on in the class, but a really useful tool is measure, right? So if you made one of these and you want to just check if you're right, go over to evaluate, hit measure. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the areas of a couple of my faces, and this will be a super quick way to check. Because if the areas of all your faces line up with all of mine, you probably got it right. And this way you don't have to go through everything and make sure you did it all right. But if you're just curious, hey, did I do everything right? You could do this. And if one of your areas doesn't match up, you can probably made a mistake somewhere. So let's do a quick measure. All right. And here's how you use it. When you click measure, you get a little tape measure. From there, you can click on any line or face, and it'll give you the length or the area. So I'm going to click on this face, and I get an area of 4.5 inches squared. Perfect. That's really easy to do. Now, when I want to deselect it, what I can do is I can just click on the next face, and it'll give me that area too. But see, this one's still kind of selected. If I want to deselect, just click out into the open, go back here. All right, so area of this piece here is 3 inches squared. And we'll just do this guy here. That will be 1.5 inches squared. All right, and then just for ha-has, this guy here is 0.71 inches squared. So if all of those match up with what you have, chances are yours is perfect. So you just use the measure, check your areas versus mine, and see if you got it right. But, even if you didn't, it's all good. This is all just for practice. And if you want to ask me any questions, feel free to leave them in Slack, or at the beginning of the next class, I can go over it. Say this. And what I'll do is I'll send out my part as well. So if people want to look at it, they can. I might do that tomorrow though, just so people have more time to work on it. All right, stop share and stop